Good morning, everyone. Justin Pouplan here. We're going to talk about next week or the next 7 to 10 day range, maybe even up to 2 weeks out. Just kind of what I'm looking at right now, what the models are showing, what the MJO. We're going to start with the MJO is going for. So this forecast is mainly for that, I guess, from today, but I would say mainly like this weekend through the 14th of October. So that's the next week or two. All right. Here's the MJO, and you can see that it's solidly kind of sticking around in this phase one, and then it looks like it's actually heading back into phase eight, which is pretty similar overall for sensible weather for Wisconsin. But it's really hanging out in here, and it's yeah, and that happens. But sometimes you kind of expect it to keep moving off like this, but when it doubles back, it kind of the pattern kind of stagnates, and you kind of yeah. So what does this mean for Wisconsin? Well, let's go take a look at this. This is called the MJO precipitation composites. Basically, it's in 3 month periods, but you got to go over to see it's October now, so we got to make sure we're in the right month because it does make a difference if you're not in the right 3 month period for sure. So here's phase one up here. And here's Wisconsin. You see this green, that's the higher precipitations. I mean, that's really more across Illinois, Missouri, and into lower Michigan there. That's where that main track is. I'm betting that has a lot to do with convective thunderstorms kind of hitting that area. And low pressure systems maybe working their way up like this. Um, and then also here's phase eight down here. So phase eight is actually similar in that it has above average precipitation across the Great Lakes. And if you go back up, you can see they're not all that much different. Now, that would be in contrast to, for example, phase three over here, where you see that that's a big negative precipitation anomaly. So we're not seeing that. Let's go take a look at temperature. Just make sure we're on the right month, 3 month period. Now, phase one, I thought this was interesting. Phase one is more of a lukewarm. When I say lukewarm, we're basing this on average, so that means a little bit above average, but not like runaway above average. But definitely warm across this area of the country. But Wisconsin itself is on the warm side maybe. That's phase one. Now we're doubling back towards phase eight. It seems like so. Phase eight is more of a battleground. You can see that there's warm in the south and the cold in the north. That doesn't mean that it's going to be above. Like it just means that it's a battleground. It's a area of contention within the atmosphere that sets up here. So it's like a storm track that might be a little bit something like this. Now, if you go back and look at the precipitation phase eight, and you can kind of see how that all comes together, right? So temperature gradient and precipitation above average. So that's what this MJO suggests, that when we're in phase one and phase eight, that's what we tend to see. And we're not really budging from it. We're not making any drastic moves away from this. So the pattern is remaining quite the same. Now, let's go take a look at the Climate Prediction Center forecast for the 8 to 14 day time frame. Well, let's start with first the 6 to 10. Now, you're seeing they have a big zone of below average temperatures working in, and then you have the above averages down there in that section of the country, southwest and southeast. Precipitation is a below average here, so that's kind of strange to me. That seems kind of strange to me based on the MJO. But anyways, I think the temperature forecast is okay, and we can go look at the 8 to 14 day time frame. Sorry, I hate the way those work sometimes. It kind of removes that temperature trend across the country, and then it has the same below average precipitation there. So it's kind of interesting. I think maybe part of it is that when you look at the 6 to 10, when it's colder like this, you tend to have less. When the atmosphere is colder, there tends to be less moisture, I guess, around. I mean, you're not getting the convective thunderstorms as much probably. So if you're more in October, if you're more tending towards winter conditions, you're going to have a below average precipitation trend because maybe you're going to have more frozen precipitation. You know what I mean? So it's kind of tricky that way. But that's my only understanding. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of as to why they would go. I mean, when your MGO is pretty clearly one way. Again, it's not all about the MJO. There's different. I mean, it's one of the main ones, but it's not the only one. And I didn't actually pull it because I thought I had some PNA. Let me just go into that right now. You can see the PNA right here. We're going from we're down, so we're about here right now, and the forecast is this red line, and that red line is below average. So it's below average. It's below. It's down almost to -2. I've seen it go down to -4 this time of year, so it's okay. I mean, it's a strong negative for sure, but that's kind of our domain right now. So you're going to see the trough in the west, but then maybe some uptick there towards a positive PNA at some point in towards mid October. So maybe that's part of the CPC forecast there. Now, if we go take a look at the AO, it's more of a flat line. There's no like clear read one way or the other. Like it's not like a landslide. So it's like you have it's almost a non-factor in a way. I would say it's more tends to be just kind of a zonal, not a zonal flow, but typically when you have a negative negative AO down towards this level, when you start getting down there, that's when you have giant amplification of the pattern across the United States. um, and then when you have a well above average AO, that tends to lead to a more zonal, stronger jet stream, but zonal and more flat pattern across the United States. Basically, so when you get into this negative AO situation, you can get cold outbreaks across the United States. So we'll see about that. Again, like I really want to stress though, go to the MGO, and I guess this doesn't make it impossible, I know, but this tends to mean phase 8 tends to be keeping things bottled up. Now, if eventually we start heading towards phase 2, then yes, you might see that cold outbreak across the southeast and more of an inverted thing there. It's kind of interesting, but we haven't really, I mean, we haven't said for sure that we're going to go in that direction. And I keep coming back to this because it's one of the things that I found success with is watching the MJO in detail. Okay, so that's the overall pattern for the next week or two. Now let's take a look. Well, that's the overall teleconnection global suggestion over the next week or two. Let's look at the GEFS, the ensembles for precipitation. They're showing over the next week. So actually, sorry, day 6 through 12. This is in the same time period the CPC had a below average. Now it's got this big. Now that makes sense to me based on the MJO. That makes sense to me. And then if you look at the temperature trends over for the days 7 through 11, here you're seeing that big area of below average temperatures. That's through 7 to 11 days. I mean, we could take it back and see where that goes from there. I mean, we're going backwards here in time. We're seeing that it emanates from the west, yes, but it's really like it's somewhere. It's kind of, to me, it seems like it stalls over in here somewhere. So you're getting that down and then it comes across like this. So when you're seeing on YouTube, like I watch a lot of YouTube videos and I see that these people are like, "Oh, big outbreak!" That's true to some extent across here, but you got to be careful to not let it get too carried away about it going off into the east because I don't know if it's going to. I doubt it's going to do that based on just the MJO thus far. Again, we'll talk 14 days from now or next week. We'll talk and see where it's heading. But that's the temperature trend. So the temperature trend is towards below average for the 2 meter. This is based on the ensembles. Now, let's look at the jet stream here. This is on weather.ca.edu. This is I like to use a 500 millibar, wherever you want. I call that the jet stream. This is just what works for me. And here's Wisconsin. So let me just draw you where Wisconsin would be, and then we'll loop this up. A little bit of a trough there working out of the west there. This is into this weekend, so you're going to have rain there on Saturday across Wisconsin. That's just the jet stream energy you can see plowing through there. And then a little bit of a reinvigoration of it, the jet stream there later in the weekend. I don't know if that's going to lead to rain. We'll have to see. Another trough coming down, smaller one there for Monday. And then you have the pattern kind of reloading and the western trough coming back. to some extent. Not a very huge trough, but definitely that trough. And that's where you're going to see that. So remember how before you had, let me go back one step, that temperature trend. Now look at the jet stream about this time, next week. Oops. So there's your trough, and then the cold kind of coming pressing in. Now what this does is creates a pretty deep low across the Minnesota area, Wisconsin included, just this whole area in general, deep low that sweeps off and it becomes almost cut off or included, and then it drifts off into the northeast area. So that's an interesting feature. We'll have to take a look at that because now we're getting towards the mid part of fall. So we're getting towards the early part of winter. Now we're talking about snow maybe coming into the picture here, but that's that pattern. And then out towards 360 hours, you just got a big, massive trough out in the west, or sorry, out in the east, and a big ridge in the west. Almost the pattern flips. But again, here's where we are now. So, it's been a tendency towards the troughing in the west, which is what I find interesting too. I mean, maybe this is a little bit off topic, but the winter forecasts are for the trough in the east, northeast. That puts Wisconsin in the northwest flow pattern for the most part throughout the winter, with numerous clippers. Now, that's definitely not ruled out. That's definitely a possibility for sure. I'm just thinking, like, when I look at this pattern lately with the trough in the west, I go, okay, so it's got to do with we're expecting for the winter the complete opposite, which could happen. But I just found it interesting how that could flip 180 degrees, But and the other thing is with October precipitation, typically, if you have above average, typically, not always, but typically above average precipitation in October will lead to more snow across Wisconsin during the winter. It's actually a wives' tale, so to speak. So it's a rule. I use it as a rule. Like, if it's wet in October, I'm going to assume that we're going to have a little bit above average snowfall somewhere in Wisconsin. So, all right, back to this now. Let's go one step further and look at the precipitation forecast. This is off of tropicaltidbits.com. And we're going to go, this is 8-hour 18, so this is somewhere on Saturday morning. This is actually midnight tonight, and then you see that low pressure system working through, kicking off rain across Wisconsin on Saturday into Sunday morning, actually moving out on Sunday morning. So, and it looks like Sunday you may have a west wind there with a decently tight gradient, and then maybe some showers there on early Monday morning or overnight Sunday. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, you're kind of dodging the bullet here because you're not getting the instability to come up from the south enough to interact with that low pressure system. And then the development there on Monday as that jet stream strengthens, kind of keeps everything to the south. So, and then the high pressure moves in, but it's fleeting and doesn't stick around very long. And then remember we talked about that big change in. So let's just go right back and take a look at it again. That temperature, we keep going back to this, but this sort of anomaly over the 5 to 11 day time frame is rearing its head here with that low pressure system working around that temperature gradient. So it's probably going to come out like that. Models, I mean, the GFS, I have not looked at the European, but kind of bring it out like this. So when that happens, you can see the low pressure working out and it really strengthens. And look at that. Now you get some blues on the backside. You got some snow working into the system with those temperatures really dipping. And we'll have to keep an eye on it because this model run particularly was further north. It seemed like the earlier runs were a little bit further east with that low pressure track. And I haven't looked at the European, and I'm not going to because we're still at about 200 hours out. So this is next weekend. This is like next Friday. This low pressure system works through. So the opposite end of it is, we could go down the snow route and say, oh, there's a chance of snow, but on the flip side, you could have severe weather with this too. Look at how sharp that cold front is. You can see the pressure drops on that, right down that cold front, and then you have. I probably should change the color on that, but you would have convective system thunderstorms breaking out across this region. Hey, just like that MJL forecast I showed you. So that makes sense to me. It's all coming together. Now let's go take a look at height anomalies. This is the last of two things, and the very last thing I'll talk is the 7 day forecast. You can see height anomalies. This is like where it's abnormally where the troughs are, where the ridges are, and as you go through time here, this weekend you see that there comes a trough through, and that's what's kicking off the rain this weekend. But then you go into next week, maybe a small trough working out, but again, all the kind of the focal point has moved off to the southeast at that point. A little bit of a zonal flow there, but that's because it's fluxing back towards the west as that deep trough works in from put that southeast Canada. Sorry, southwest Canada. I always mess that up. Yeah, and those are pretty deep anomalies there. I mean, for October, you tend to get some big storms in October, but the cold air working in from behind that is kind of interesting. But yeah, I mean, and then usually when you have those big bullseyes over the region, that tends to bring some interesting weather. So. And then that moves off, but then you have this whole region here, this whole United States. It seems to be in these below average height anomalies. But then again, by the time you get towards the end of the run, sometimes they tend to, But but then you have this big trough working out in the east now. This is the operational GFS, so it's not the ensembles, but you can see that going back in time here, and then as it swings through. So the model at the end of the run, 360 hours for what it's worth, wants to do the trough in the east, but I'm going to stick with this first 180 hours, and I'm kind of going to base my next week or two on that because that's definitely what's been shown to be happening lately. You stick with what's working, and you don't make the big knee-jerk reactions towards what it might be showing at the late hours because that'll become evident eventually. But yeah, so that's the fun part. But that's the fun stuff. So here's a 7 day forecast again, just showing you that rain chance on the weekend, Saturday. I think it's done by Sunday. I didn't really look at the clouds forecast for that much, but I would say that you're going to have clouds through Sunday more frequent than not. And then maybe Sunday you're trying to break free from that. But Monday through Wednesday, the high pressure works over the top, and you warm up just a little bit, and you get the sun to come out and the clouds to break. But by late next week, you may be dealing with some weather again. This is the temperature graph, and you're seeing that here on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, cold. That's I would say actually Friday, Saturday for the most part. Let me go back and exit out of that. Yeah, because the 53 and 50, that's looks like about 10 to 15 degrees below average for this time of year. But then it warms back up. So whatever narrative you want to say about it being cold or warm, it just flip-flopping. So down here, and it goes up. And it's like, okay, so how do you communicate that long range? You just say it's a bit of a wild up and down. But then I think once you get beyond that, it stabilizes a little bit as the high pressure is in. So the other good news is that on the next website update, we're going to be getting rid of the dew point here because I think we're done with that. I think the days of our 80 plus temperature are done, and I think the days of severe weather are for the most part done, but we'll have to keep an eye out here because if that low pressure system does work through Minnesota, then Wisconsin will be at risk of severe weather. So that's the update I have for you today. Shameless plug: if you haven't yet, please head over to our website and register. We do a lot of different services, and we're trying to hit a lot of different areas. We were public and private sector, so I want to hit everyone. I want everyone to have an opportunity at this. I'm not catering my business to one specific group. This is helpful for, I would assume, weather enthusiasts, farmers, business owners, snow removal, anybody who's get logistics based on the weather, that they need to know the weather ahead of time, that you might be interested. Photographers, hey, if you're a storm chaser and you're looking for an opportunity, maybe I can be some help. It is $4.99 per month. Monthly, but that price will never go up over time. I mean, I assume if you're here for 2 years, we're not going to raise the price on you like cable companies. So we don't have that business model. But I think in the future we will offer new tiers. So, anyways, please head over if you want to support our page, support what I'm doing. And this is my full-time job now. I quit my job working in the marketing section of marketing world and corporate world. I'm done with it. I'm here now. So I'd really appreciate it. And thank you very much for watching. And I will talk to you very, very soon.